Hello, Grace Point family. Today I have the pleasure to share John 18:1-9 with you guys. Obviously, I'm really excited to be doing this. My name is Matthew Garner, in case you guys haven't seen me around Grace Point. But how could I not want to do this one? It's called Jesus Knocks the Dudes to the Ground. Sounds pretty awesome, right? All right, well, let's dive right in. I'm going to read some verses and then give you a little bit of insight to the verses, hopefully. And maybe we can even have a discussion about it. So John 18, verses 1-9. John 18:1. When he had finished praying, Jesus left with his disciples and crossed the Kidron Valley. On the other side, there was a garden, and he and his disciples went into it. Now Judas, who betrayed him, knew the place because Jesus had often met there with his disciples. We're kind of expecting that this is a garden of one of Jesus's followers that he's visited pretty often. He had to go through the Kidron Valley to get there. This particular valley contained the Garden of Gethsemane, which we well know as the garden that Jesus spent his last night in following his persecution on the cross. Basically they were going there. This was the place that they had their final meeting in the Garden of Gethsemane before Jesus was arrested. Now it says in verse 3, so Jesus came to the garden, guiding a detachment of soldiers and some officials from the chief priests and the Pharisees. They were carrying torches, lanterns, and weapons. Jesus, knowing all this was going to happen to him, went out and asked them, "Who is it that you want?" Again, it says right there, Jesus knowing all that was going to happen. Jesus knew this was going to happen. This wasn't anything that was a surprise or a shock to him. And often it's really interesting to think back into the Old Testament. We have 2 Kings where Jesus has an angel and he wipes out 180,000 soldiers. And even in Matthew 26:53, Jesus says, don't forget, my Father could send 12 legions of angels to come and rescue me. And yet, he didn't need 12. He could have asked for one angel, not 12,000 angels. One angel was able to take out so many that this is the power that Jesus was sitting on. So the ultimate strength came from Jesus when he stood there and he took what he didn't have to take, but he did it for love. He did it for us, and he did it for you and me. And Jesus says, obviously right here in this verse, knowing all that's what's going on, who is it that you want, basically? And Jesus of Nazareth is what they reply to him. I am he, Jesus said. And Judas the traitor was standing there with them. When Jesus said, I am he, they drew back and they fell to the ground. The sheer power of the words alone are what caused these men to fall to the ground. It's incredible. It didn't take anything but words from him. We're obviously expecting that they've heard the stories of his great power and his healings and his miracles. And that's just the power of God that they obviously feared. And it continues in verse 7 to say, again, he asked them, who is it that you want? Jesus of Nazareth, they said. Jesus said, I told you, I am he. If you are looking for me, then let these men go. This happened so that the words he had been spoken would be fulfilled. I have not lost one of those that you have given me. And this is in reference, I think, back to John 6, when he's talking about not losing any of his disciples in a spiritual way. But this kind of makes it sound more like it's in a physical way, like he's watched out for them and he's comforted them in a physical way. And Jesus had all this power. I kind of envision it like one of those action movies that you watch where there's this guy and one night he destroys a whole army or a battalion of men, and then the next day there's this other guy that doesn't know anything about this person but kind of pesters him and he eggs him on to a point where you're like, oh dude, you don't know what this guy's capable of. Well, guess what? This is the guy right here that we're talking about, Jesus. They go to arrest the king of the universe. And it's just crazy that he goes willingly. And it's just crazy that this arrest scene could have been something completely different. And yet, with his words, he knocked him to the ground. Not with force, not with a legion of angels. And it's just an amazing picture of the God that we serve. I think there's a few takeaways we can take from John 18. And it's that Jesus has an amazing self-control beyond all reason of doubt. He just knows he's about to go on the death march, the most excruciating death known to mankind. And yet he does it willingly so that we might have eternal life. Another thing is that sin entered into this world through a garden, and it started in the Garden of Eden. And Jesus was buried in a garden. This kind of full circle, you know, we entered into the world through this garden. Jesus had to be buried in a garden so that we may have eternal life through him. Next time you're outside and you walk near a garden or through a garden, just try to think about that. It's an amazing picture of what Jesus did for us.